One of the concerns that I guess both book fans and fans of the films are struggling with at this point, but for different reasons, is how are they going to handle Paul and Chani's relationship in Dune 3, especially in light of the reveal of Paul and Chani's twin children, Leia II and Ganima. I mean, at least in Dune Part 2, they were already kind of having their spat, but Paul says that she's going to come around. I've seen it. And now that we know that they are going to have children, the context around that is still a bit foggy. But this is now a side effect of Denis Villeneuve's changes, unfortunately. That there are fans that really liked the changes that Villeneuve made to Chani. I can understand it to a degree. I don't know if his changes had the effect that he wanted, but I can understand to a degree why he made it. According to him, he wanted to have the theme established that Paul is not the hero, that he is a human who makes human mistakes that had horrible consequences. And he thought that Chani would be a good lens, and the changes that he made would be a effective way to convey that theme to the audience. And while I can appreciate his desire to establish that theme, which of course is a major theme in Frank Herbert's Dune, but at this point in the story, we're meant to think that Paul is the hero, not through any bad reasons, but for good reasons. That was the author's intention, to create the hero, to create the superhero, and the consequences of their mistakes can be even more devastating. And that is made clear in Dune Messiah. That was the next part in the theme. Featured in Dune Messiah was the examination and fleshing out that Paul is human and the pawn of destiny himself, and there are things that were beyond his control that he just couldn't do anything about. So it really highlights his mistakes, and that's how the story is meant to flow, regardless of his approach to that, which I applaud his wanting to make sure that that's conveyed. But it does leave a very sticky situation when it comes to the relationship between Paul and Chani, especially as we move forward into Dune Messiah, and especially as we pave the way into Children of Dune. Because no matter what, Paul and Chani have to be together. They have to have children. This is what's going to be a primary thing that people will be talking about when the news starts to kind of leak out. What can we expect when it comes to Paul and Chani? But then you also now have this group of fans who want Chani to remain detached from Paul, who actually want her to be an enemy of Paul, to actively work against him. This is an article from Screen Rant that came out just a couple weeks ago. I'll be so disappointed if Dune 3 goes back on Dune 2's biggest character change. It's not like we can deny that he might do it. He could do it. He's changed her character greatly already. So it's not like we can confidently say that he won't make Chani some sort of a conspirator against Paul. We can't confirm that. And there's a lot of people that want that to be the case, that want her to be a part of the conspiracy to take down Paul and his dynasty. That could be where she is, in the desert somewhere, plotting against the Atreides. And the way you portrayed her character so far, it's not like we can't see that that would kind of make sense. How this one character change just led to this huge fracture within the fan base, fans of the films and book fans. And thinking about this change to Chani, I don't know how any of us will be happy. I think he's going to have to choose. Are you going to service the fans of Chani as she was portrayed in the film? Or are you going to make the book fans happy and strive to get them back to that place, to their relationship as described in the book? I don't know if there's a way to make us both happy. I honestly think that whatever happens, it's going to be divisive. It's a sizable portion of people that recognize that this is Denis Villeneuve's interpretation and can appreciate why he made this change. Let's dive into what that side of the fandom feels in the wake of the announcement of Paul and Chani's twin children. Villeneuve made some huge changes in Dune Part 2 that fundamentally went against Herbert's source material, but the most obvious alteration was the dynamic between Paul and Chani. In the book, Chani is much more willing to go along with Paul's delusions of grandeur because she knows it's the only way for the Fremen people to survive and spread across the galaxy. I wouldn't describe it that way, as delusions of grandeur. That's such an odd way to put that, I'm sorry. Another thing too that Denis Villeneuve had to change, it kind of goes along with this relationship of Paul and Chani, is he built into the story, just specifically in Dune Part 2, that there is this fracture between the Fremen, between the North and Southern fundamentalists. And that kind of paves the way for why Chani has more modern views, I guess. They don't really say why she holds the views that she does, which is why I don't like the way her character seems to suddenly change, because in Dune Part 1, she straight up says that she doesn't believe that Paul is the Lisan al-Gaib. That's fine for her to question it, but it also establishes that she believes in the prophecy of the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world. She just doesn't think that Paul is that one. That's established in the first film. And then in part 2, she clearly doesn't believe in anything of the Fremen religious beliefs, because inexplicably, she knows that they've been implanted by the Bene Gesserit. She knows that they are a product of religious manipulation. She straight up says that this is how they enslave us. I wouldn't describe it in the book as her just being a willing participant. This is just how all the Fremen people believed. This was over thousands of years of religious seeding on the part of the Bene Gesserit. So it also kind of weakens the Bene Gesserit when you see that she just inexplicably knows of the manipulation itself. It made the Bene Gesserit and their religious engineering very weak. So a lot of things had to suffer in order for Chani to be changed this way. By the end of Dune Part 2, Chani has grown fully disillusioned by Paul's power and leaves him altogether, riding away into the plains of Arrakis on a sandworm. This change was met with mixed reactions upon release, but most audiences can generally agree that it gives Chani much more agency over her own destiny and transforms her into a more complex three-dimensional character. I definitely disagree with his characterization that most people liked the change. Clearly, that's how you feel, so that's how you see it. But I saw, from my little corner of the internet at least, a lot of people who didn't like it. And even ones that aren't fans of the book themselves didn't really like how Zendaya was portrayed. Just seeing that she was very one-note and pouty. It's not any fault of Zendaya, but that's how Denis wanted her to be portrayed. That was the direction he was giving her. As written, I don't think Chani has any issues about agency. That's just personally. It makes it sound like she was just some lovesick puppy who didn't know at all what was going on. She was smart, she was spiritual, she was a strong desert warrior and a priestess who was full on in keeping with the religious customs of her people and participating in them, because that was a huge part of the Fremen's survival. And it was also in keeping with the Bene Gesserit's religious manipulation. There was no reason for her to question the prophecies, because that's the intent of the Bene Gesserit in planting these seeds. It doesn't give her more agency because she inexplicably knows what the Bene Gesserit are doing. It undercuts the Bene Gesserit in a significant way, and how they were so formidable and insidious in implanting these religious prophecies and legends. This took thousands of years, and the environment of Arrakis is what compounded this even more for them to attach themselves to the prophecies of one who would bring them to paradise. It just made them more fanatic because of their environment. That doesn't mean that the characters are weak. This just means that the characters are from the world that they're written in. It doesn't make sense for this character to have our modern sensibilities, to have more agency. She has agency. No one's telling her what to do. She starts to be enamored with Paul because he's a capable warrior, and she believes these prophecies because their religious customs are so much ingrained into their everyday life. And she being one of those people that's a spiritual leader. She loves Paul, not because she's so compelled to. She's a lovesick puppy and is not questioning anything. That's never how she's written. I just prefer the characters to be written in the world that they're living in. I don't want to see characters with our modern sensibilities if it doesn't make sense to the universe. And that's, at the end of the day, why it's so strange, where he kind of strayed from Dune Part 1, that the Fremen are so divided from the Northern and Southern fundamentalists. It makes even less sense for Chani, who was a spiritual leader. She was a Sayadina herself and maintained the spirit of God among their people. That's what they do. And she was in line to be a Reverend Mother one day. But then it's like a complete turnaround for her character, and it doesn't give her more agency. It actually doesn't make sense to me of why she holds the views that she does. I just want the characters to live in the world that they live in. And it's not a utopia. We are in a feudal interstellar society on a planet that's gonna kill you in any number of ways. Death is a part of life here, and what has helped to sustain the Fremen is their religious customs and survival customs that they hold to as much as sacred scripture. That's the other side of the fandom and how they see this, that she has more agency. It just seems like a canned response. I've seen this so many times, but I don't see an actual really good argument for it, because what they're also saying is that the way she was written was just someone who was blindly going on. They really cut it down and diminish the depth of her character, because that's what you have to do in order for your argument to make sense. She was hardly in it. She was just lovesick. I've seen so many articles like this that always accompany tearing down and deliberately misunderstanding how her character is written, so they can make this argument that it's better in the film. I'm sorry, I can't take your argument seriously. If you liked it, great, but that's not Chani. I want to see the story of Chani. I want to see the story of Dune on screen. One of us is going to have to be disappointed, and I hope it's you. Sorry, Screen Rant. At least the only thing I have to hang my hope and optimism on is that they do have children. And again, I think that the only thing that would make sense is that that's part of the story of her getting pregnant. It's really hard for me to believe that she's already pregnant and we're going to have a Children of Dune Messiah hybrid thing. I just think that would be way too convoluted and just not Dune, not those stories. It'd be completely unrecognizable as a story. So I hope, that's all I can do, that it won't go down that path. The article continues, in the books, there's nothing to separate Chani from the other Fremen loyalists who blindly believe that Paul is the Muad'Dib who will save them from Harkonnen oppression. Well, he did that though. That's the thing, he did that. And that was why Frank Herbert wrote Paul the way he did. He wanted him to come to power not through any bad reasons. He wanted to create a hero that you would follow and come to that point where you wouldn't ask questions anymore. It's not so much a warning about Paul and him capitalizing on this religious manipulation. It's about everyone else. It's about the masses who come to be so enamored with this individual that they don't ask questions anymore. But the thing is, you had to build him up as a hero first, because that's the more insidious thing, to create a hero, someone you like and will gladly follow into battle. And one of the things to build him up as such is tearing down and defeating all of these horrible enemies. We applaud the downfall of House Harkonnen, of the Bene Gesserit and their part in it, of what happened to House Atreides. Duke Leto was a good man. What happened to him was insidious and unjust. So yes, we applaud the downfall of the Harkonnens, anyone who had a hand in that. The Harkonnens, the Bene Gesserit, and the Emperor. We can't help but root for that. That's intentional. Villeneuve clearly recognized this weakness in her character and allowed her to choose herself instead of Paul's manipulative politics. There's a sense of tragedy to Chani's fate in the Dune books, and it often feels like she's never in control of her own destiny. Yeah, that's the point. Paul isn't any better. In Dune Messiah, we see he's not in control ultimately. He finds that out. How much of a pawn he is, just as much as anyone else. He didn't choose this. He didn't want to be the Kwisatz Haderach. Others chose this life for him. It doesn't make Chani any better than anyone else in the character at the whim of fate, at the whim of time and events that will just be. And there's nothing you can do about it. And for Paul, the only thing he could change is just to have the outcome that would have the least destructive consequences for those he cares about. But at a certain point, he has no choice and control over destiny. It goes on to say the plot is even more complex and convoluted than the first book when it comes to Dune Messiah, with secret conspiracies and unexpected double crossings at every turn. Almost the entire first half is told through flashbacks and anecdotes, which isn't entirely compatible with a 2-hour movie. No, it's not. I don't know what you're talking about. Ultimately, it will be much easier if Dune Part 3 accepts that it simply can't be a note-by-note adaptation of Dune Messiah and uses the existing relationships and character dynamics to forge something unique and singular instead. There are huge strengths to the book, but Villeneuve should have the creative freedom to focus on the characters and their personal conflicts instead of the overall political intrigue of Dune Messiah. He's already set the stage for this perfectly with Chani's departure in Dune 2, so I'm holding out hope that he won't sabotage his own ideas simply to be more loyal to the source material. You say that, but Villeneuve says that he made this change so he could be faithful to Frank Herbert's themes and ideas. How it's executed, it may differ, but that was why he made that change. He wanted that to be established. I think it could have been done more effectively if you stayed more true to the source material, because I don't know if a lot of people even got that. If you're not familiar with the books, there was a lot of people that I saw that weren't really grasping that theme. I think it was only ones that already knew and were familiar with the source material that were able to appreciate what Villeneuve was doing. And of course, he explained it. But I think if you were going just off of the films and not knowing about all of these explanations, I don't know if that's really done effectively as far as Paul's theme that surrounds him. Anyway, so these people exist. This is a significant portion of fans that are more fans of the films, and that's perfectly fine. And this is something that they will be disappointed in if they don't continue with how you've portrayed the character so far. So I thought that there could be a compromise, basically, and that's what I'm hoping for, because I knew that these people were going to be around because of how much you changed this character. It just seemed like a long shot that a character like this was just going to change her mind and come back to Paul like it's nothing. It was really hard for me to see a character doing that. But we know that they're going to be together. And again, there is that line that Paul has seen her return. And I think there can definitely be a compromise here. If they're willing for it to be compromised, if they're willing for Villeneuve to strive for being faithful ultimately to the characters and themes surrounding them. And one thing that at least Villeneuve has done is he really has strived to stay true to that core theme of Frank Herbert's saga, which is surrounding charismatic leaders and those who blindly follow them without question. And I think for the most part, how Paul is interpreted and adapted in his adaptation is very well done. So I hope that that will continue, because he has stated that this film trilogy, he wanted to end it because that's where he sees the end of Paul's arc. And in a way, yes, it does. But as we know later, there is more to the story. But this is a significant end that I think could be satisfying as a film trilogy. So that's what I'm kind of hoping there. When it comes to Paul's story and how he's adapted, I have more confidence in how he will be portrayed. And I think there could be a compromise between those who like the changes to Chani in this and those who just want them to adapt the source material. But I want it to be done in a way that still feels organic to what you've done already in the films, because it would definitely be very jarring if this character as film Chani is just all of a sudden back with Paul and everything's sunshine and roses. I think that would be weird. It has to be done in a way that makes sense and eventually, hopefully, maintains the spirit of the source material.